Hey, I'm Robert Kennedy, the local media producer here for Trophy Line, and on top of that, I run and own the social media pages of Man Over Beast. And the hunt you're about to watch is from this year, and it's how I filled my first tag for the Michigan season. This year really I was behind in keeping up with what was going on here at the home family property. Between hunting in North Dakota, work, and scouting public property around the area, my focus wasn't here behind my house. And to preface all this, the property that we hunt as a family, there's like 6 of us that hunt around 100 acres. But the way it hunts bigger because of all of the habitat work that my father and myself and other people have put into the property. With that being said, the family property has been in our huntable rights for as long as I can remember. I've shot my first buck off of this piece of property. I've shot almost all my deer off of this property just growing up since I was 12, youth hunt and all that kind of stuff that goes on around here. So I had a pretty good idea of how the deer were going to be moving opening week of October. All the habitat work put in, food plots put in, all that type of stuff kind of leads to an appreciation and an understanding of how the property serves for the wildlife. And as the season started, I knew where I wanted to sit. On October 1st, I wanted to sit in an area that I thought the deer were crossing. We call it the cut. And deer would cut through this area to get to the other side of the field. So I sat there, opening night. I had a handful of deer come by, and I had the first buck that I thought I was going to be excited over come within 20 yards at the end of shooting light. For some reason, that buck didn't get my heart pumping, and he's a nice buck. Just didn't get my motor running. On October 2nd, I decided to push into an area that I like to call my honey hole because it's just a spot that's produced well for me for the last few years. It's where I shot my buck last year. It's where I've shot a handful of bucks. My grandpa used to love that spot, and he hunts that area as well. It's a secluded bedding area down in the river bottoms. And if anybody that hunts river bottoms knows, river bottoms are just fire in the right circumstances. So I pushed down into this area the following night, had a really close encounter with a 9-point bedded in the river that I wasn't able to get a shot at, sadly. It got my heart running, it got that motor running, and I just wasn't able to get a shot at it. But at the same time, I was getting trail camera photos and realizing that the deer were just on the food. I should have known this from day one, that the deer were on the food. It was mild weather. It's been a consistent weather. It was in the 80s for like the last 5 days. And with a cold front coming, I didn't care. I think cold fronts are overrated. When there's a stable weather pattern that's consistent for wildlife, I think that it's easier to pattern deer. So with that said, on the second night of me hunting, I was getting these trail camera pictures, and I was like, man, they're on the food. And the first night, they were on the food. Second night, I wasn't in the food, I was in the bedding. And the third night, I couldn't go because I had to take kids to soccer practice. But I knew I wanted to be at a food source the following night. So October 4th, I get geared up. I know exactly where I'm going. There's been deer pictures coming in the last 3 or 4 days that deer have been cutting through. And I decided to get as close as I could to a pinch point in the small food plot we had. Now this is kind of a key moment for mobility even on private land, because in private land you can have a lot of presets, tree stands, ladder stands, box blinds, pop-up blinds. All these things are readily available to you generally when you're hunting private land. In this circumstance, there was actually a tree stand down there, an old ladder stand that we haven't hunted in a couple of years. But that was 30 or 40 yards further down to the north of where I wanted to be. I wanted to be as close as I could to where this grass made a little cut alongside of the food plot, because they were just tending to use that corner, either cutting the corner or working around that corner, and that's where the spot I needed to be. I climbed up one of the smallest trees I've hunted out of, a little pin oak, made one little shooting window by pulling over a dead limb. I couldn't break it, didn't have my pocket saw on me, but I pulled that over and I had that window right to that corner, right to where I wanted to be able to shoot. I limited myself almost on everything else, but I could shoot that corner. And I felt pretty good about the night. On Instagram, I even called it out that I was going to have an opportunity at something. And I was right. As the afternoon started to move on, I had a few does filter through. I had a really nice 2.5-year-old work his way underneath of me. Had a smaller buck work its way underneath of me. Had a handful of does and fawns work underneath of me. And while all this was happening, there was still deer filtering out in the field and in the food plot. So I was surrounded by deer consistently towards the afternoon, and it was fun. It was really high stakes, really Russian roulette if I was going to get winded or not. And luckily enough, the ones that even winded me didn't spook off the rest of the deer. So as the afternoon progressed, I was noticing there was just groups of deer. It was almost like the bucks were still bachelored up, and I think it had something to do with how warm the weather actually was. There wasn't a cold snap yet to break them up, or wasn't close to the rut. All the deer knew there was food. We're going to come in groups, we're going to hang out, play around, and that was the situation I was running into. And as the evening progressed some more, the last group that caught my eye was a group of 4 bucks coming out 150 yards away from me. And as this group of 4 bucks came out of the woods 150 yards away, I glassed them and realized one of the bucks in there was the one I wanted to shoot. The bucks took their time across the grass. A couple of them made it into the food plot. Some were working some scrapes. And as I got to sit there watching them, I could hear pheasants cackling and other wildlife, and then the bucks started fighting in pairs together. It was really a serenity type atmosphere happening right in front of me. And at the same time, I still had deer coming behind me and at the base of my tree, making other scrapes. It was like I wasn't even there, and that's what was really cool about it. Like, I got to witness all of this activity and socializing by the wildlife without any danger around them, at least how they felt at the time. So finally, the buck I wanted was the last one to come across the food plot, and he started cutting across the grass into a really tight window. I had already made that window, and the way those bucks came across that grass, I was going to have to really swing out wide of a branch to try and get a shot. As soon as I thought I was going to have to start swinging out, he turned and walked dead nuts right into the center of my shooting lane. So I drew back, and when I drew back, one of the other bucks that was at the base of my tree spooked off, and he picked his head up real quick, and I think I felt a little rushed from that buck spooking, and I let my pin settle, and I hit that trigger, and my arrow didn't go where I wanted it to. It didn't go where my pin was, and I was a little disgusted at myself.
I want to watch that back. I don't know how far back. Probably further back than I wanted it to be. Kind of surprised me. These bucks were all around me. That was a big night. need to watch the film back. I just watched the film back. It's definitely dead. I think it's liver, is what I'm guessing it is. He had no idea he'd even got hit, so that's nice. Sharp broadheads make death peaceful.
Editing everything, I realized that I'm 99% sure I didn't level my bow. I think it was canted over to the left, and I just brought that pin over, meaning that my arrow would be shooting further to the right, and when I hit that spot right behind that shoulder, in reality, I was aiming further to the right than what I really was because my bow wasn't level, and I sent it dead right through the liver. And most of us as hunters want things to be swift and peaceful. I wanted to let that deer bed up and give it 6 hours before we started tracking, but we couldn't because there was rain coming at midnight. So we gave it about 4.5 and started the track, and blood was fantastic. I mean, it was just step here, step there, and it wasn't just drips, it was just bleeding. It was just a good blood trail to follow. We had our dog Walter with us to try and train him up on tracking, and we're following blood and get to 100 yards looking good, 150 yards looking good, 200 yards, nothing. Just went from a pile of blood to zip. As I'm regrouping back at Last Blood with my cousin Ryan, I hear my dad pipe up, "We gotta get out of here now. We're leaving now. We're leaving now." Me and Ryan are looking at each other. He's like, "Let's go." Like, okay, all right, what's going on? Like, and so we start getting back out to the field edge, and about 75 yards to 100 yards away from Last Blood, and he goes, "He's still alive." He's like, "I walked up 5 yards from him, and he is in his bed, and he picked his head up at me and just kind of dozed." He's like, "He's still alive." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "Do we go back in there and do we shoot this thing?" And he's like, "He didn't bust." They convinced me to just wait until morning, and we did. Well, it's the next morning. We decided to just wait overnight and try and get a little sleep. Dad's gonna run the camera. We're pretty sure it's dead. It probably died within the last hour that we had seen it, since he walked up onto its bed. He's gonna direct me. I've got the bow just in case it's still alive and finish it off, but he should be dead. But we woke up to rain, just like they were calling for. It's supposed to start raining at midnight, and it's raining all day. So I don't think we made a fatal mistake by searching for it just a little bit early, because if we didn't have a good direction on it, we'd have a heck of a time this morning in the rain trying to find a direction. Yeah. Yep. So in the end, I was proud of myself for two things, and I was upset at myself for one. Number one, I was proud that I was able to get one of the top 3 target deer that I had, or sticking to that top 10%. This is something that I place on myself. And then I was also, like mentioned, disappointed in not preparing myself for a quick rush shot and hitting those check marks when I draw back. The other thing I was proud about was my decision to sit where I sat. So with the information I was getting with the trail cameras, and then knowing that the tree stand that was 40 yards away, I wouldn't have a shot at that location. So I made the move 30 to 40 yards away so I could shoot where I did. Remaining mobile on private property still, increases the chances of success. Sometimes you notice these small patterns and these small trends on the property that you're hunting, and you wish that you would have been 30 or 40 yards closer. It happened to you 2 days in a row. A deer is just out of range. 3 days in a row, just out of range. And having the ability to stay mobile, whether that's with a saddle or with a light setup of some sort, like a tree, like a mobile tree stand type thing, is key to finding success in the woods one way or the other, or at least increasing your odds of finding success. There's a difference between having a place to hunt or a stand to hunt, hoping that they come by your stand, or you go to where the deer are moving through. So you just hope at that point they don't catch you. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out the full hunt itself, go on, head over to Man Over Beast. Otherwise, thank you for watching this one, because you guys are keeping my job around.